Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes, and here are five big stories for today. So the first one is that Dmytro Kuleba, he's the foreign affairs, or was the foreign affairs minister in Ukraine, is out. He has resigned from government. I don't detect that there was anything like a scandal involved. It doesn't seem like that's what was going on. Dmytro Kuleba has resigned from his position as Ukraine's foreign minister following an announcement last week from President Volodymyr Zelensky that a cabinet reshuffle was imminent as he tries to strengthen the government 2.5 years into Russia's war against its neighbor. Domestic media has been awash with rumors in recent days that Kuleba would be dismissed and that his replacement was still under consideration. The news of Kuleba's resignation comes after various other leading ministers also submitted their letters of resignation days before the expected government reshuffle. So I don't see that there was a scandal, there was just a reshuffle. According to Bloomberg sources, Kuleba, who has resigned, is likely to focus on Ukraine's accession to NATO. He could be very valuable there, strengthening his support for the country. Saibiha is set to become Ukraine's next foreign minister after the shakeup. And this shakeup was a huge cabinet shakeup. There's been a reshuffling of ministers in the Ukrainian cabinet following a meeting of the Servant of the People faction. That's the party that Zelensky comes from. The new appointments are as follows, and there's like it's like 8 of them, 9 of them, and there's only 18 actual cabinet posts. And now one's a deputy minister, but still, that's a pretty significant number of people in the government that have been shifted. Okay, big story number 2. Just in, U.S. Treasury Department has announced sanctions against Kremlin propagandist Margarita Simonyan. Russia Today media group and its subsidiaries, including RIA Novosti, RT, and Sputnik. Okay, so this is coming from the, let's look at the actual article from the Department of Treasury. Today, the Department of Treasury Office of Foreign Assets Control designated 10 individuals and 2 entities as part of a coordinated U.S. government response to Moscow's malign influence efforts targeting the 2024 U.S. presidential election. These entities have long used a variety of tools such as generative artificial intelligence, deepfakes, and disinformation in an attempt to undermine confidence in the United States election processes. Executives at RT, Russia state-funded news media outlet, began an even more nefarious effort to covertly recruit unwitting American influencers in support of their malign influence campaign. RT used a front company to disguise its own involvement. Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, Treasury will not waver in our commitment to safeguarding our democratic principles and the integrity of our election systems. Today's designations complement law enforcement actions taken by Department of Justice and the Department of State's designation, and it goes on. And then here are the people that have been sanctioned. I mean, whether the sanctions will mean anything to those people or not, it doesn't really matter. It's more of a statement than anything that will materially affect their lives. Attorney General Garland addresses Russians' effort to manipulate U.S. opinion ahead of the 2024 presidential election. Quote, "The American people are entitled to know when foreign power is attempting to exploit our country's free exchange of ideas in order to send around its own propaganda." That's fair. Okay, RT put out this statement. How can RT interfere with elections if it's banned everywhere in the West? Well, that's a good question, except it's not banned everywhere. You can see it here on Twitter, and that's where this came from. Michael McFaul replied, RT is right here, spewing propaganda to influence our 2024 elections on one of America's most influential social media platforms. You can also find it just on the plain internet. I find RT videos on Rumble, so you can access it if you know where to look. Julia Davis. Julia Davis is the force behind the Russian Media Monitor. They do some great work highlighting the kinds of crazy things that the Russians are spitting out in Russian propaganda on state media. And she said, I've often highlighted Margarita Simonyan stupidly boasting about RT's covert projects targeting Americans, like the ones for which RT's employees were just indicted. Loose lips sink ships. Keep talking. So yeah, there's that. Okay, big story number 3. Taiwan's president urged the Chinese authorities to return the lands annexed from China by Russia in the 19th century. Taiwan's chief executive said that if China's claims to Taiwan relate to territorial integrity, the Chinese authorities should also return the lands given to Russia in the 19th century. Why not return the lands occupied by Russia? Russia is very weakened now, isn't it? Said the chief executive. The Taiwanese leader noted that the PRC does not want to attack Taiwan at all for territory. He said, so it's not just because it's not a land grab as much as having hegemony in the international arena in that neighborhood. But if they were to grab this territory from Russia, I'm not sure how much of the world would oppose it or object or argue with them. It's just a thought. Maria Zakharova reacted to statements by Taiwan's administration chief saying, this was funny, Russia has consistently adhered to the One China principle, and the PRC government is the only legitimate government in China. Therefore, the Taiwanese chief executive is unauthorized to make any statements on behalf of Beijing. Well, he's not trying to make statements on behalf of Beijing. He's trying to point out the inconsistency here. Lai incited to separatism by the Americans can bark as much as he wants. It will do no good to him or the other people of Taiwan. Now, turning to big story number 4, Russia was secretly buying dual-use goods from India. So that's telling you a couple things. One, they need it. 2, the sanctions are working, that's why they need it. And 3, they're trying to do this on a down low through India, and that's kind of a bad idea for India. Okay, Moscow was also studying the possibility of building factories in the country and planned to invest in joint Russian-Indian projects for the development and production of electronics. According to leaked documents, in October 2022, the Russian Ministry of Industry and Trade developed confidential plans to spend about $1 billion on the purchase of critical electronics through channels that were supposed to remain undetected by Western countries. So they know that they need the stuff, and India was looking like potentially wheeling and dealing, but this is according to, I think, the Financial Times, FT. Okay, let's talk about where Biden is, and we'll just look at the U.S. in general here. Yet another red line crossed by Putin. And we're talking about how Biden had warned back in March that Russia will pay a severe price if it uses chemical weapons in Ukraine. And it's now used them upwards of 3,000 times. Now, again, small scale. It's not like massive chemical weapon, but still, they're doing it, right? Yet another red line crossed by Putin. Perhaps Biden doesn't remember Obama drawing the same line for Putin's partner in genocide, Assad, and doing nothing. That was one of the original sins of encouraging Putin's aggression. I think that's pretty fair. Biden is still holding the line that he's not going to allow the Ukrainians to use American weapons on the land in Russia. He's saying the same thing. I made it clear what we support and what we don't, and he's sticking to that. So those of you who were like, Biden, 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 are you still Biden, Biden, Biden? Like, I know it's now Kamala Harris, but like, are you rethinking what that was like? Because he's a friend up to a point, because he just won't, he has this aversion to potential escalation, but that escalates. That's what Putin knows and escalates. In the meantime, you have folks like this in Britain. Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has called for immediate delivery of ATACMS to Ukraine. He also urged the removal of restrictions on their range. Now, he's not in power, but he's still kind of a big name over there. So Biden's failure to follow a clear and decisive course on Ukraine has condemned the country to a long war of attrition and possibly a slow national death by slow-walking U.S. weapons and support and permission for its use. Now, I'm not just saying that. And you know, I'm a Republican. I'm a Republican who doesn't support Trump. I can't support Trump, and I don't support Biden or Harris either. So I'm a homeless Republican. Here, this was coming from the Hill. Biden must abandon his half-butted Ukraine policy before it's too late, right? Biden, just as Jay in Kyiv, wanted to keep the Ukraine story quiet during the run-up to the election, sending less arms, forbidding Ukraine from striking Russian positions, hoping Putin wouldn't do anything crazy before November 5th, before the election, right? They're looking to the U.S. election. But Putin always leans into weakness. He smells weakness, and to do that, it's a fool's errand. Meanwhile, folks like Mike Pence are actually urging the GOP, that's the grand old party, the Republicans, to unite behind Ukraine in a bid to counter China. Now, Pence isn't running for anything, but Pence was Trump's former vice president in a bid to urge fellow members of the Republican Party, like me, to unite behind Ukraine, former Vice President Mike Pence is hitting back on the GOP's opposition and continued U.S. support for Kyiv in its war against Russia. The number one reason Pence argues the GOP should back Ukraine is also the party's chief argument against continued support. China. China is openly assisting Russia in its invasion in Ukraine. Defeating Russia hamstrings China. You get kind of a twofer, or you get it twice as bad if you don't deal with this issue. Russia's control over Ukraine would provide China with more oil and natural gas, further fueling China's expansionist ambitions. Many Republicans in the upper chamber, that's the Senate. In the U.S. Senate, the Republicans are largely working with Democrats to support Ukraine. It's not the same way in the House of Representatives. Many Republicans in the upper chamber, like Senator Lindsey Graham and Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, have unequivocally backed Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky, some even making the trip to Ukraine, while many Republicans in the House have opposed more U.S. support over concerns related to spending. A more powerful Russia will only encourage China to become more aggressive. Standing firm in providing lethal aid to Ukraine will restrain authoritarian regimes from Tehran to Beijing. I think that's exactly right. That's why I'm full-throatedly supporting Ukraine. I've done nothing but that for the last 2+ years. Okay. Here, this is Mike Pence talking on Fox News, and it's a little while ago. It was out here like it was breaking news. I don't believe it's breaking news because he references Biden near the end. Now, Pence says that he's not voting for Trump, and he's Trump's former vice president. Listen to what he has to say here.
Come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year. Look, I'm incredibly proud of the record of our administration. It was a conservative record that made America more prosperous, more secure, and saw conservatives appointed to our course in a more peaceful world. But that being said, during my presidential campaign, I made it clear that there were profound differences between me and President Trump on a range of issues, and not just our difference on my constitutional duties that I exercised on January the 6th. I mean, as I have watched his candidacy unfold, I've seen him walking away from our commitment to confronting the national debt. I've seen him starting to shy away from a commitment to the sanctity of human life. And this last week, his reversal on getting tough on China and supporting our administration's effort to force a sale of ByteDance TikTok.
Why do you think he did that? Why do you think he had that reversal on that before we go, sir?
Well, I can't speculate on it, but what I can tell you is that in each of these cases, Donald Trump is pursuing and articulating an agenda that is at odds with the conservative agenda that we governed on during our 4 years. And that's why I cannot, in good conscience, endorse Donald Trump in this campaign. But let me say one last thing. That being said, look, Republican primary voters have made it clear, Martha, who they're for in this election. What I'm going to spend the rest of this year on is talking about what we should be for, and that is the broad mainstream conservative agenda that's defined our party and always made America strong and prosperous and free.
Well, understood. I got 2 seconds, but who are you going to vote for in November?
Well, like most Americans, I'm going to keep my vote to myself. But
would you vote for President Biden?
I would never vote for Joe Biden. But
okay, now so that tells you the clip is a little bit older, but he lays out things, and he's not going to vote for Kamala either, I'm pretty sure. But that's where a lot of conservatives actually are. Trump is not a conservative; he's a populist. He's doing things that we're like, why are you talking about that? You're supposed to be the head of the Republican Party, and he's just taken the party in a whole different direction. Now, I talk about this in my About information. If you care about Ukraine, you're in the right place. This is a one-topic channel. I'm a Reagan Republican who fully supports Ukraine. I'm a conservative without a candidate to vote for in November. And I try to provide context to help you see what I see. That's where I am. Now, Gary Kasparov talks about this. Americans are politically homeless today if they believe in small government, individual freedom, low debt, global American leadership. And this is one of the big places where Trump has departed. Global American leadership. I'm not a globalist, but America has to take its place in the world. And if it does, if it creates a vacuum, That's a real problem for the rest of the world. Strong national defense, free trade, immigration, not being a crook, and a list of other traditional conservative values and policies. Again, we're homeless. Okay, last little bit I'll leave you with is a quote from Timothy Snyder. The reason we had the Second World War the way we had it is the moments where we could have been stopped were ignored. There's opportunity after opportunity to try to make the situation better, and we can't seem to seize the opportunity. Okay, my friends, that's all that I have for you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.